well, I liked it. Okay, I will grant you that restoration is not without its faults. But as the last piece of red versus blue media we're ever going to get, I'm glad we got it. And my only real complaints being the lack of budget for animation and the short runtime. But that can be chalked up to Warner Bros. Shutting down Rooster Teeth. I feel it's important to highlight the pressure and limitations Bernie, Matt, and the rest of the crew had to work with when talking about this final season. They had to wrap up a story that has been going for 2 decades, and that honestly has been waning in recent years. But I had faith that with Bernie back writing and Matt directing, they would be able to give RVB a proper send-off. And my faith was rewarded. The directing of the machinima team under Matt gave us dynamic camera work and some really nice shots. That really helped sell the emotions of the scenes. And Bernie's writing manages to pay dividends to much of the show's history. I believe the decision to retcon everything post-chorus was ultimately for the best, and only a decision I would be okay with Bernie making. And even with the shortened runtime, Bernie manages to make it work by having the plot continue on from seeds planted in the chorus trilogy. And thanks to the meta returning as the season's big bad, he didn't need to dedicate time to fleshing out a whole new villain, as he was already strapped for time to tell a full story. But even with the time limitations they manage, give us a pretty satisfying story, with memorable moments like the return of 479er, Tucker struggling to resist the memory fragments, and Griff, Simmons, and Caboose reminiscing on their past adventures. Do I think some story beats could have benefited from more time to develop? Yes, but for the time they were given, they did a great job, especially with tying up Griff and Simmons' story. After Sarge is killed by the meta, he promotes Simmons and even gives him his shotgun, and Simmons' first act as team leader is to discharge Griff since he knows it's what he's always wanted. But Griff decides to stay for the final battle, even though he knows they're both probably going to die. Caboose, meanwhile, has some real good subtle development in coming to terms with Church's death. Church left instructions for Caboose to use a memory unit to bring him back. Caboose, however, used it instead to revive Tex, and we can see this twist being hinted at during the campfire scene. Having Kathleen back as Tex was a real treat, and getting to see her and Carolina team up to fight the meta was a great send-off to the leading ladies of this show. Speaking of fights, while not on the level of some of the past season's fights, due to the lack of funding, this season still manages to have some real good fight moments, like Sarge pinning the meta with a bubble shield, or when the meta got hit by the Reds thrown Warthog. And we even get a nice little reference to Monty Aum's ice fight, when Caboose accidentally blows up a cliff, and it starts raining down debris on the fight. Now there are areas where the animation leaves something to be desired, but considering that the actual fights clearly had more time spent on them, I'm willing to see it as a necessary sacrifice for the good animation we got. And now, this wouldn't be a proper review if I didn't talk about the ending. Simmons tosses the recovery unit to Tex, who uses it to contain the memory fragments, and herself saving Tucker. We also get to see the memory of Tex reunite with the memory of Church inside the recovery unit, and we even get to hear Tex say in series that her name is Allison Church. Meanwhile, outside the unit, Caboose, following Tex's instructions, destroys the recovery unit and finally says goodbye to Church. We then get the twist reveal that Doc, who had been tagging along with Wash, was actually an imaginary figure that Washington's mind conjured up to deal with Doc's death on Chorus. I've got to admit, this caught me completely off guard and gave me some mixed feelings. I can understand why people don't like this twist, but personally, I'm okay with it, as it's the only real interesting thing I could see them doing with Doc, considering the time they had to work with, and this helps show just how much the events in Wash's life have taken a toll on him, and pairs nicely with Washington remembering his fellow freelancers, which is a highlight of this season for me. And that's it. Griff finally leaves Red Team, and Tucker tells us to get out of here. And with that, Red versus Blue is over. As the last season, I feel Restoration pays proper tribute to what came before. I love the little details, like the armor having slight differences, like Sarge having ODST shoulders because he was one before joining Red Team, or Simmons having a robot arm because he was turned into a cyborg back in Blood Gulch, or even Griff having a larger body type to other characters. There are things I wish we could have gotten, such as characters like Donut, Junior, or hell, even the Elite Squad from Chorus. I mean, come on, that recovery unit throw was made for Donut. However, I understand that people's schedules may not have allowed for this, and that adding in a whole new character that would need to be either completely animated or green screened in from another game wouldn't really be an option with the allotted budget. We were given winks and nods from all over the Red vs. Blue timeline, from Tex getting her black armor from the teleporter like during the Blood Gulch Chronicles, to Wash injuring himself to activate his armor's recovery beacon like in Recovery 1 and the Recollection Saga, to even references to Zero for the few fans it did have. Is it perfect? No. And I can understand elements like Caboose's new voice actor and armor have been a turn-off for some viewers, and that there were elements of the retcon seasons that a large majority of the fandom enjoyed. But, like I said before, I'm grateful for what we got, and if you're not okay with this being the ending, you can always just look at it as one of Church's simulations. But now with Red versus Blue over, it's our turn.